How many of you out there have ever tasted frog legs? Raise your hands. Okay. A number of you haven't. I feel sorry for you because really, frog legs are super delicious. Unfortunately, these days they have become really expensive, beyond my budget actually. And I understand most of them imported from Indonesia these days. But it wasn't that way in the old days. When I used to live over in East St. Louis, my cousin and I used to go out frog hunting. And you didn't need much equipment to go frog hunting. You just needed a gig, a good flashlight, a net, and some hip boots. Now, we'd be better off to have waders, but we didn't have enough money to buy waders in those days. I don't even know if there were any waders in those days. This goes back to the turn of the century. But anyway, what we would do is there was you need a spot to hunt these frogs, right? I mean, they're just not going to come to you and just stand here and wait for them to hop up. You got to find a place where they are. You got to go out and get them. So we found a place between East St. Louis and Collinsville called Spring Lake. It was kind of a swamp. I wouldn't say it was a full-fledged swamp, but it was kind of a swamp. It didn't have any cypress trees or all that, but it had lots of willow trees, a lot of overgrowth generally, but just a rotten place, so to speak. Lots of mosquitoes. And what we would do about 9:30 at night, had to do this at night now. You can't hunt these frogs during the day. You got to do it at night. So about 9:30 at night, we'd drive over to Spring Lake, get out of the car, put on our hip boots, get our equipment ready, our net we tied to our belt, and slip quietly, very quietly into the water. Now why would we do that? You needed a good moonlight night for this, because this brought out the romantic instincts of the frogs. The frogs would be there. So my cousin and I would slip quietly into the water, listening to the he'd go one way and I'd go the other. And you'd get out the old flashlight and you'd walk along, and hopefully you'd see a pair of beady eyes staring back at you from either on top of a log or on the bank. And what you do then is walk very quietly as you could, being careful to keep that flashlight right on those eyes, because if you let it go off, he was gone. And hopefully you'd get close enough and you'd stick him with the frog gate. Now the animal rights people probably are not really happy about that, but that's the way we would do it. And you pull him off there and you stick him in your live net. And so this is, but there was a bit of a problem. Besides the mosquitoes, there was other competition out there. Snakes. Now these snakes liked frogs as much as you do, maybe more. So as you're going along there, you have to be careful about these snakes. And in fact, one particular evening, I was wading into the water, and the water was deep where I was. It was almost up to the top of my boots. And I had several frogs in my live net that were hanging down on the side. And I'm walking along. I feel some tugging on this net. What is going on here? What is this tugging on this net? I pulled the net up. There's a 6-foot cottonmouth hanging on there. I took off out of there like a torpedo. That was the end of my frogging for that particular evening. But anyway, once you captured these frogs, hopefully you'd go out and have a reasonably decent night. You bring them home, and you supposedly would clean them out. But you might be coming home at 1 o'clock in the morning, maybe later. So this one particular evening, I came home very early in the morning. I said, I don't feel like cleaning these frogs tonight. I threw them in the sink. I go to bed, and they're in the net, of course. I go to bed, and I was single at that time, staying at home with my mom, and I hear this plump, plump, plump. My mom says, hey, get up, see what that noise is. I get up, I go into the kitchen just in time to see one of these frogs headed for the living room. I go in there and one's sitting on top of the television. Another one's looking at me from the couch. So I had to run around trying to gather all these frogs up and skin them that night. Now it's 3 o'clock in the morning. So the next day, I tell you, it wasn't a good day for me at work. I could barely keep my eyes open. But now, once you have these frogs, then that situation is fixing them. Now, what happens, you butter them up, you put breading on them and all that good stuff. I mean, they are really something. And you throw them in the skillet. But you have to be careful when you do that, because the frogs do not react as every other kind of fish or whatever when you throw them in the skillet. What happens is their legs straighten out. And when my wife did that the first time, it was very traumatic for her, because didn't put the lid on the skillet, and the suckers jumped out, and you'd have to chase them all around the kitchen to put it back in the skillet. It's really a difficult situation. And it kind of scares you, really, if you get to it. So once you get them all caught again, well, you can finally eat them, and it'll be fine. Now, I would urge you all to maybe consider this frog, but there's not a lot of good places to go, because you need some nice, clean water. And I was walking along the Merrimack River several years ago, walking along there, and I saw a bullfrog. In the middle of the day, I see this bullfrog on the side of the bank. So I go over there, and I see he's not moving. He's just standing there. Now, this is very unusual for the bullfrog. They are, you get close to them, they're gone. I look down, the poor sucker is full of sores, and he's kind of a red-looking, funny color. I said, well, that's something. So I just kind of scooted him into the water, got in the water, he jumped right back out again. So I wouldn't urge you to go down to the Merrimack to hunt frogs, because, you know, that could be a problem. Now, but you might find a farmer who's got a pond, perhaps, where you'd have some decent water where you could go and do this. So that would be fine, but be careful where you get the frogs, because even though they're delicious, they're not worth dying for. I mean, so, you know, you got to be careful about that. So if you wanted to go out and find them yourself, that's one thing. But I was on the internet the other day, and I called up Amazon. I found out that you can get 8 pairs of frog legs for $37. So if any of you are interested in having these delicious frog legs for $37, more than I'd want to spend. But if any others of you would like to do that, why, I'd urge you to do that, because these frog legs are scrumptious. They are delicious. They're terrific. They're the piece de resistance of culinary situations. I mean, they are magnificent. Go ahead and spend the $37. Bon appetit.